It's time for Real Talk with Brian and Dan, the weekly talk radio show dedicated to discussing important real estate topics, plus insight into the local community. With a combined experience of over 50 years as local real estate brokers from the East Side Real Estate Team at Keller Williams Realty Bellevue. Here's your hosts, Brian Levitt and Dan Edwards.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Real Talk with Brian and Dan. It's Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. Thanks for joining us. We have a really great show lineup today, Brian. We have Rob Young with Oasis Senior Advisors and Michelle Green with Caring Transitions. But first, let's have some Real Talk. Brian, why don't you share with me the question that has spurred today's Real Talk?
Yeah, I had a question come in from a client in Sammamish that asked about buying foreclosures or short sales just because inventory is fairly tight still and wanting to save some money. I think the big problem is there really aren't very many, if any, short sales I'm seeing right now, pretty much anywhere on the east side. It's just the strong market that we're in. And foreclosures, you really got to break that down into two levels, one being properties that are pre-foreclosure, so going to the foreclosure auction to acquire them, and the second one being post-foreclosure, which means the bank has acquired it.
That's so to break it down for our listeners out there, the whole idea here is trying to find a way to find value in a market that is going up month over month, year after year. And a lot of times the idea is, well, I will find a property that's in distress, and that will give me a real deal. So investing is good, and there are opportunities. Right. We'll discuss that. But what we have found is there first needs to be some classification. So, right. Brian, by the definition, what is a foreclosure?
Foreclosure is an owner who's going into default. They haven't been able to make their payment, so the bank has initiated a legal procedure to reacquire the home.
Now, the actual action of foreclosure is a specific time and date. What Correct. You're talking about is somebody missed a payment.
Missed multiple payments. The banks don't, they typically work with the borrower to try to reconcile the problem, but once a person's in default and not making payments, it'll go to a foreclosure, which is conducted at an auction, a public auction. They're conducted in Bellevue at the, I'm trying to know what parking garage is that I've got it.
It's somewhere here in Eastgate.
Right, yeah. And what that is it's sold at public auction for cash to the highest bidder.
Okay, so let me just say that right now you can go to a website,
right,
rhymes with Illo. And you can actually search for foreclosed properties. You can filter by that. What are people seeing there when they do that search?
They're going to see the notice of trustee sale, which is the foreclosure procedure. They'll see what the balance owing is, what the arrears are, and total monies required to pay off the foreclosure. Now, the owner has an option to do that.
Right.
It's curing the foreclosure.
Right.
Typically, they don't. Once it's that far, it's less common to do that. But you can see right before the auction, you'll see the auction date and place and time, and the opening bid.
Right. So essentially, what you're seeing, if you're searching on any foreclosure website, you're seeing the notice of trustee sales.
Right.
Because the actual foreclosure is the day of sale on the steps of the courthouse. Correct. Or in a parking garage in Factoria. So I just want to be clear, we can actually help people with that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things we can do is arrange for the cash. And, it's interesting. It's not like there's people there with suitcases full of U.S. currency. What people do is bring certified checks from a recognized financial institution, cashier's checks, and basically make change with those. They'll have, a couple of $100,000 checks, some 50s, some 20s, some 5s, and some 10s, and they'll make change with the auctioneer to complete the sale. And it's done same day.
And I could say right now, given our current environment, because foreclosures are back to normal levels, right? We're not seeing a record level of foreclosures. Because of that, the folks that are actually bidding on these foreclosed properties, they're pros. They've been doing it for a while. They're actively looking for the deals, and they're not going to pay retail. So essentially, somebody could get a good deal, but it's fewer and far between. Like the real halcyon days of buying a foreclosure was 2010, 2011.
Right. And I recognize that you're competing with pros, both people buying for their own account and with institutional investors. Institutional investors are large companies and funds that are buying up these homes typically to hold as rentals. That's the reason to call Dan or myself, is we have the ability to compete with the pros.
Yeah, definitely. So now, real quick, let's shift gears into the short sale and bank-owned property. So Brian mentioned at the top of this conversation that the short sale property, they're a little different. They're still owned by the seller. And then bank-owned property has actually been bought back, or keys in exchange for moving out.
Yeah, cash for keys.
Cash for keys, and the bank now has taken them on board. So the quickest one to purchase would be the bank-owned, right?
Sure. The bank-owned, sometimes you'll hear the term cash for keys. What happens is a person's in foreclosure. They'll negotiate what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. They will deed the property back to the bank, and the bank saves some money not having to go through foreclosure. The owner walks away, usually a little bit of money in their pocket for a rental deposit. It's a benefit to the consumer, and it's a benefit to the bank. But once those properties are acquired by the bank, they are assigned to an asset manager who lists it with a local broker, and those you'll see on the multiple listing service.
Yeah. And then lastly, short sales, which is a non sequitur. They're not really short sales; they're long sales. But lately, I mean, actually, since
there's nothing short about a short sale,
but except that recently they've gotten more efficient with the process. But the whole deal there is you get an offer accepted. That offer then has to be approved by the bank that's lend the money. So there's usually a second round of negotiations, 30, maybe 60, maybe even 90 days after you've agreed to terms.
So let's just, for edification for our listeners, a short sale is a sale where the sales price is less than the mortgage balance now owing. So what the bank has to approve is the willingness to accept a payoff that's less than the total amount that they're owed. So they accept a short payoff, hence a short sale.
Right. So now on our website, www.theeastsiderealestateteam.com, if you go to advanced search, you can actually search all the short sales and all the bank-owned properties that are available for purchase. Brian and I would be happy to also connect you up with anybody that's considering getting into that foreclosure auction purchase.
Right.
And then lastly, there's a tiny little niche right now, and that's the wholesale deals. That's where we actually run across as we're out there doing market analysis and talking with sellers that maybe aren't quite ready to sell or are just willing to take cash and then walk away, leave all their possessions. They're done. And those are what we call wholesale deals. So if you're interested in that, you can just email us at radio@theeastsiderealestateteam.com. So next up is our mortgage moment. We've got Michael Burdick with Loan Depot. He's going to be talking to us about what's going on in the mortgage world for the week. So thanks for listening to Real Talk with Brian and Dan. We'll be back right after the break.